So, books that Frenchmen have given me in Paris on first dates. Yes, it seems to be a thing here. At least it is for me. I get given books on first dates. Not flowers, thank God. I would be mortified personally if someone showed up with flowers on a first date. But books. Love books. So that's a positive of dating in Paris. Anyways, I'm packing up, not packing, I'm organizing, I'm pre-packing because my landlord is taking back my apartment after many years here and I have to move, which is like the nightmare scenario in Paris. The housing shortage is very real. That would have to be another video. So I found these 4 books in particular that have such stories connected to them. I thought this will be fun. So I'll show you the book and explain what happened on the date. And with that particular man, here we go. So I'll do this in order of happy to crappy, like an okay date to a crappy date. How about that? Let's see the first one. So this one. This is a good book. It's about how the human brain is designed to destroy the planet. Okay, not exactly positive and exciting, but really smart and interesting. And the guy who gave this to me on a first date, we met for coffee, he was very sweet. And it was very thoughtful. You know, he'd been Christmas shopping before the date and had bought books for his family and said, this book made me think of you, which was so sweet because I had mentioned I love psychology and that I'm into the environment and stuff. He was very sweet. He was dressed oddly for a French person. He was dressed like a skateboarder and he's over 40 and that's also a rare style of dress for Paris. So there was a small red flag that he was dressed in a really childish way. But I like casual men, so I overlooked it. We did kiss, and it was a very sweet kiss. Now, before the second date, I was en route to an appointment in his neighborhood, and I said, I'm passing through your neighborhood today. Why don't I drop by for like a quick 20-minute coffee? And he said, yeah, great. So, popped by his apartment, and bless his soul. Yeah, the childishness that he definitely had, like mental health struggles, bless his soul. Like he talked a lot about having this cat that had died, but the cat had died years earlier. And the apartment was kind of like a shrine. Like the cat stuff was still everywhere, even though he hadn't had a cat since. But he also had that like clutterbug disorder. He was a pack rat, like a small studio apartment with like boxes of maxi things from Costco piled up everywhere, and it was really overwhelming. And this huge screen TV playing rap music videos of like women in bikinis, and he was high as a kite. So bless his soul, the second date didn't happen. Moving on to the second book. This was a totally different kind of guy. This book, The Green Serpent, this is like a classic kind of slightly mystical, metaphysical story. Not very strong in the physical front, but a little bit. I didn't love it, but it was a sweet thought because we had discussed in our chats before meeting metaphysics. He ended up being a Mason. They always tell you it's supposed to be a deep, dark secret, but they're also egocentric. They can't resist telling you. But he was a great guy. He was one of those eccentric bourgeoisie who lived in other places, was bilingual in English, really smart. I love eccentric bourgeoisie guys. That really works for me. Great banter. So we had a drink, and then he was pretty wild and hyper, like very eccentric. So we just started walking around with no real plan, and we found cool art galleries and some pop-up fashion. He was like trying on clothes. He was fun. Not really my thing physically. And then he kissed me at the end of the date, and it was really performative and awful. So we ended up being friends. Now, usually, as I'll say in other videos, friends in France doesn't happen. But he, like I said, was very international and very eccentric, and we did end up being just friends. We even went away to the countryside and nothing happened. He was very cool. Until one day, he video called me from his house, his apartment, amazing apartment, by the way, like an elevator that with no buttons, and he calls you up. I love that. Anyways, behind him on the video call was his big computer with a screensaver, like me in giant picture. What the hell? What? A picture from my Facebook. I was like, why is a picture of my Facebook your screensaver? I was really weirded out. And to calm me down, he had to admit the truth. There was this girl that I really liked who wouldn't be monogamous with him. And I knew the whole story as his friend. And he had been lying and saying that I was his lover. And I was like, so that's why I went away to the countryside? So she thought we were having a cheeky weekend away? And he's like, yeah, so it's so wrong to use me like that. So the friendship died after that. I just felt like it broke the trust. Might have agreed to it if you had asked, but I really hate being used in weird dramas. And there's so many weird dramas here. Okay, number 3. Moving on to number 3, that would be this one. So this is a good book, The Reality of the Reality. It's a classic about communication and consciousness. But the thing is, this book's originally English. This was like quite early after I arrived in France. I can understand that these guys gave me French books because I did speak French by then, but like I hardly spoke French. And why would you give me a French translation of a book that's usually published in English? Anyways, it is a good book. I didn't really read the French version. The guy who gave me that was actually a stalker. He had seen my profile and I had not liked his, but he had found me on the internet and relentlessly stalked me across all social media. What I learned from that very early on is you don't use your first name, you always use your second name, and you never ever use photos that are elsewhere, like on business sites or websites. And I also learned that because Paris is quite small, for me at least, coming from London, we have over 8 million people, and here in Paris, there's 2 million. I always choose to pay to have a profile on any internet app, a dating app, where only people I like see me, because I have had these kind of things happen. So he stalked me relentlessly. Why did I meet him? Because my kryptonite is intelligence. And he was so smart. I just cannot resist a smart person. And he promised that if I met him and it went badly, he would leave me alone. So we met at the Grand Palais to see an art show. And he wasn't my type right away. He's very, very wiry. I like fit, but I don't like skinny fit. I don't know. Anyways, don't like skinny either, but Paris, well. So I wasn't immediately attracted, but he was very funny and smart. So near the end of the date, I was thinking maybe. And then we went for a coffee in the cafe there at the gallery. He started being super weird. He just sat there and he went, "You're too old for me." He was older than me. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, "My ex was 18 years old. He was over 40. Like, welcome to Paris." And then he said to me, "And I can't see your body because you didn't take off your coat." So it was autumn and I was wearing my fall coat, but it was getting towards winter and the gallery was quite cold. So I kept my trench coat on. Pretty normal, right? But apparently, because he couldn't see my body, he was very angry, and I was so freaked out by that. Clearly declined a second date. But that wasn't the end of it, because 3 years later, 3 years, might have even been 4 actually, I received a text from him. "Do you remember me? Went on that date. How were you?" As if we were friends and as if the date went well. That is so classic Frenchmen. They will try again years later, or they will text you every year, particularly at Christmas. I always say, once you meet a Frenchman, you never get rid of him. Anyways, okay, the final book I'll show you, which was the worst of these 4 experiences. I will have to blur this out because he's a co-writer on this weird-ass textbook. And he was so arrogant that he signed the book and wrote me a little note and then dated it as if he was someone famous for co-writing this textbook that probably very few people ever read. The story of how I decided to meet this man. He found me on a dating site and sent me a message saying he came on the site to cancel his profile. He wasn't looking to date anyone, but my profile came up and he couldn't believe how interesting and intelligent I seemed. He'd like to be in contact. Now, I'm just such a curious person. And we kind of chatted, and he was really smart again. He wasn't even cute, short and bald, but I love smart people. He's like, "We could be friends." And, like I told you, I already knew by then, Frenchmen never just want to be friends. But Again, the intelligence got me. So finally, I agreed to meet him for lunch. He had got a bit flirty before that, sent me photos of himself on vacation and stuff. But I went for lunch. What the heck? Always love a lunch. And the lunch was fine until he told me near the end of the lunch that actually he lives with a woman, and the reason he contacted me was because they were looking for a third person to be their lover. I was like, you have wasted weeks of my time with messaging, and I've just sat and had lunch with someone all along. It was because you had this plan to have me as a third in your relationship. Are you kidding me? I was so shocked. I was just like, I'm going to go home now. And he kind of followed along with me to the metro, and he's like, can I kiss you? It's like, abso-freaking-lutely not. And again, not the end of the story. I don't know how much later that was, 6 months, a year. He texts me. Yes, he does. Did I want to go for coffee? No. Anyways, so those are 4 books from 4 weird dates. If you like this kind of story, if you find it an interesting window into life in France and Paris in particular, then you might want to follow me on Substack, where I talk more about the exploits and craziness that I've gotten up to living in Paris for over a decade on and off. I will put the link below the video. I'm also a coach here in Paris. I'll put a link to my bookings. You can also book me if you just want to have a chat about whether Paris is the right place for you to live if you're considering it, or if you wanted to talk about certain things about living in Paris. Hope that was fun for you. It was fun for me to share, and hope you subscribe so you can watch the next video.